Good evening, everyone. I am Chris, one of your NFL writers here at Occupy Fantasy, joined, as usual, I would say, on a best ball stream by Chuck Silver. Chuck, how are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. I think we both had a few days away, haven't been grinding drafts, so pretty excited to get into it. There's not much in terms of changes, but there are a couple guys moving a little bit in ADP.
I'm going to jump into a best ball mania tonight, and looks like we're still waiting on four people to enter this contest. So if you want to draft alongside us, if you are watching, there are still a few seconds for you to get into the contest here. I did put some tweets out on my timeline, handles on the screen here, Rooney FFG, looking at some of the ADP movements since Best Ball Mania 5 launched at the conclusion of the NFL draft at the end of April. And there were I think there were things we already knew, Chuck, but it's always good to like put the visual together and look at it, if that makes sense. A lot of the rookie wide receivers that people were high on during like the big board process, which I know you can speak to, kind of dropped like a rock. And there are some players that moved around that I think we weren't expecting. Got the number 2 pick here tonight in this contest, which
Nice.
means we are firmly in CD Lamb territory, which I'm actually excited about because I was able to draft a CD Lamb team about a week ago. I think I talked about that in our Discord and our Underdog channel, but I haven't necessarily had the chance to go through my thoughts for stacking Dallas and Philadelphia in championship week there, as well as I believe it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the semis and the new look Carolina Panthers in the first round of the playoff rounds. So that's a lot of me talking about where we're at as this thing gets started. What are your thoughts on all that stuff, Chuck?
Um, as far as ADP's moving, like
Yeah.
I don't know, I kind of seem well. The big one I'm thinking about is Jerome Ford jumped up in ADP while Nick Chubb was falling, and now we get a report that they can't even tell which leg Nick Chubb had hurt. And I know that you were on Nick Chubb, and I kind of resisted it, but those guys are kind of flopping or kind of switching, I guess, a little bit, and kind of just figure out what other pairs of players are going to do that over the coming weeks. I'm thinking, I'm wondering if there's something with like Kansas City. Like I've been targeting Rashi Rice's ADP is continuing to move up. Wonder if Xavier Worthy's going to fall
Yeah.
because he kind of hit a ceiling a little bit. I think where he was going.
Yeah, so we're going to lock in CD Lamb here, and I'm going to let the timer run just so I can switch the tab here, and we have a little bit to talk about something. This is the post. I guess I will self-promote a little bit. This is my show, I guess. This was the tweet I put out at the end of, or I guess the beginning of the week. This was on Sunday, and just relative to Nick Chubb, since the contest opened, biggest fade at the running back position. He's dropped over 3.5 rounds in ADP from pick 99 during the big board contest to about 141 here as of the end of June. I feel like Chubb will not stay in this range as we move into training camp and get more reports about kind of how he's looking. Even if he is a miss for week one, I think the news is starting to look slightly more positive, Chuck, than like most people are assuming out for half the season, if not more. And I think that's the entire thesis behind um, Jerome Ford being one of the biggest risers here as well on Underdog by ADP. So I guess I am just kind of putting my cards on the table there. I think the field is slightly wrong here. We've got a really good player in Nick Chubb, obviously coming back from a devastating injury. But if his trainers that he's been working with are saying that he looks way better than they would expect after that injury, I think that's something we should pay attention to, at least here at the beginning of July before the rest of the field figures that out. So we can talk more about some of those ADP moves as we go through the rest of the draft here. But back to the Underdog board here, which should be back on the live stream screen now for you all. First round pretty much playing out exactly how we expected after my pick.
One thing I'm noticing in the first round is AJ Brown and Puka Nakua are going ahead of Bijan and Brees Hall pretty regularly. Not
Mm-hmm.
something that we saw early in the summer, but I mean, it just kind of goes along with all the wide receivers. ADPs are just steadily still creeping up, even the guys in the first round.
I am really interested in adding, or at least being in line with the field, adding for me because I haven't been taking him a ton. Devonta Smith with the
Mm-hmm.
Eagles, and on this particular team that I have, obviously it's going to be kind of close to see if I even have that opportunity based off of ADP. He does go right around where my pick currently is here. We got the Week 17 correlation with the Dallas Cowboys, but aside from that, just as like a standalone play, I mean, we've got Kellen Moore, former offensive coordinator of Los Angeles Chargers last year, Dallas Cowboys the year before that. We have Devonta Smith potentially playing a much more interesting role in his system, closer to like Keenan Allen last year, CeeDee Lamb in 2022. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb last year was very good as well. As he comes off the board, see, as I'm touting him here, that's my fault for doing that. But I love the pick in general here with Devonta Smith, with all that in mind, especially if Philadelphia gets more multiple, as they say, and they shift into forcing Jalen Hurts to throw the ball more and involve all these guys. I do think Devonta Smith is pretty much right there in terms of expected opportunities in the passing game with A.J. Brown, and you get him at a slightly cheaper price. So I think he's a really good pick right now.
Oh, yeah. He's been one of my top targets when I have a top 3 pick. And then I've managed to get Jalen Hurts at pick like 47, which seems pretty good on this team. Or with CeeDee Lamb, I should say.
And it does seem like this particular user here, Mike C6212, is probably going to be going after Jalen Hurts, I would imagine, here on the turn. I mean, when you double tap the Eagles receivers like that, that's what I would be considering anyway. We are back on the clock. Devontae Adams came off. There was a report about Saquon being used like Christian McCaffrey in this Eagles offense, which is a big reason why. Obviously, I think he just came off the board there. I don't know if I truly believe that, Chuck, but obviously we got to pay attention to something like that. I'm going to go with Mike Evans here for some semifinals correlation with CeeDee Lamb.
The difference in Saquon's ADP is kind of insane. Over on Drafters, he's going at 25. I have not been taking Saquon, but he's falling past 30 pretty regularly, and that's where I'm getting my Saquon exposure. And I'm happy to have a little bit based on like the comments, but I still mostly want to fade, I think.
Mm-hmm. Kind of did this somewhat unintentionally, but there's actually I'll make my picks, I guess, before I go into this. Devo DK was probably a strong pick there. I have been over-indexed on Kyren Williams. I think I need to kind of pump the brakes there a little bit. A player that I want to get more of in this range is Devin Achane, but what I'm going to do here is actually force myself to take a player I haven't taken enough of in general, and that's going to be DJ Moore with the Chicago Bears. I do think there's a lot of standalone value here that's not necessarily correlated with the first 2 receivers I took, but still really good opportunity to play him in lineups in best ball here. I think it's Jack Miller, who works for Establish the Run, talking about how there's a lot of awesome correlation here that is easy to fit on the top of your rosters with looking at this owner who took Justin Jefferson, pick number 7, Go Tigers 2016. Justin Jefferson has a Week 17 matchup with let me just make sure I get this right. I don't want to butcher this. With Green Bay Packers, Week 15 matchup with Chicago Bears, Week 16 matchup with the Seattle Seahawks. So right in this range, rounds 1, 2, and 3. If you're able to thread this needle of getting like Justin Jefferson in round 1, DK Metcalf in round 2, DJ Moore in round 3, or like a Keenan Allen in round 4, and like a Tyler Lockett or Jackson Smith-Njigba like a little later on in the draft. All of those teams play each other in each of the playoff weeks. It's a nice little round robin, if you will, of correlating those NFC teams with each other kind of at the top of the draft board. And you get like really good players that are being drafted in this range anyway. So I thought it was interesting. It resonated with me because when I saw Jack's tweet, Chuck, I had recently drafted a team that had kind of done that with JJ on my roster. So that is definitely something I thought that people should be aware of.
Oh, yeah. And that's been something I've been targeting since the beginning of drafts, not necessarily with Justin Jefferson, a lot with like Ty Chandler and Marshawn Lloyd. Mm-hmm. And I'm taking a lot of Chicago guys, basically everyone on Chicago. But the thing I was behind on was Seattle. So that was something that I was consciously trying to add more of. And it's basically just taking more DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's falling too.
I think we've talked a couple of times on our shows together about being a little gun shy on picking Geno Smith, but I think, mm-hmm. with him being basically right next to Baker Mayfield down there, and we've both talked about how Baker's one of our favorite values. I mean, it's hard not to consider Geno in the same category. If Seattle's competitive this year down the stretch, he probably is still starting in those playoff weeks, and it's hard to argue with the receiving core that he has. So I think I am going to try to mix in some Geno Smith exposure as we run through the rest of the summer here.
Yeah, that's something I need to add a little bit more because I'm kind of getting sick of clicking on Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield all the time. Yeah. And like I said, I'm adding more Seattle. So I have taken Geno a little bit more than before.
Go ahead. No, you're good. I'm listening.
Well, you took DJ Moore. I was going to ask you if you saw that report about Malik Neighbors returning punts.
I hadn't seen that. That is definitely an interesting development, though.
Yeah, I'd have to pull it up to see exactly what it was, but I really like DJ Moore, and I've been taking a lot of Keenan Allen as well.
I did see, and then basically this is the Roto World feed. They do a great job aggregating the news. Drake London, the Falcons are basically telling us that they expect to be more pass heavy this year. I think that's obviously good news with the brand new coaching staff there, and we probably want to be interested in all of those pieces in the passing game. I don't know if ADP is truly caught up with quote unquote the new look Falcons with Kirk Cousins at receiver outside of I guess the top of the board there with Drake London. I think there's a lot of value with Atlanta that we probably should be talking about a little bit more.
Well, it's tough because they have two guys who, showed potential we thought could be good. Who's the wide receiver too there?
Got Darnell Mooney joining there, leaving Chicago, signing with Atlanta. Definitely kind of a late round option that is kind of interesting. But Atlanta's a team that I've had a blind. Basically, the whole NFC South outside of Tampa Bay, I have kind of a blind spot in my portfolio right now. I got to mix in some more Carolina Panthers too. I was talking about that, I think, in our staff chat earlier. At least with the running back there in Jonathan Brooks, definitely feel like I want to have some more of him than I have currently.
I've been taking probably a little bit too much of Carolina, but at ADP, they all seem pretty good.
So I slammed 3 receivers in a row here, and I don't really see anything that is super enticing to me at this point. Obviously, this guy's trying to double tap Lamar and Mark Andrews. I don't know. I mean, I don't really have an incentive to go for a Baltimore guy here or an Arizona guy with Trey McBride. So I think I'm just going to continue down this path of drafting wide receivers and take Terry McLaurin, who I don't believe I've actually selected yet this year, even though I was extremely high on him last year. And we obviously have the upgrade with Jaden Daniels, we think anyway, at quarterback. So getting Terry here at the round 4 or 5 turn is probably something I want to mix in more of. How much Washington have you been selecting?
I started taking Jaden Daniels a lot more recently, and Terry McLaurin is like in that range. He's basically my pick every time. He feels really good when he's your 4th wide receiver. And then
didn't even do this on purpose, but we have week 17 correlation with Atlanta, so I was just talking them up, and now I have an incentive to maybe correlate with Terry McLaurin here. Pick 50. Looking quickly at correlation, I don't love any of the running backs that are just kind of right here, so I'm not going to force myself to do it. I actually think I might try to go for Baker Mayfield here. So I'm going to double tap the Tampa wide receivers and get Evans and Godwin. Slightly ahead of ADP here on Godwin, but out of the receivers left here, Chuck, I have him projected for about 12 half PPR points per game on average, and that's far ahead than where I have basically all the receivers left by ADP. So even reaching on Godwin here, he's kind of a clear buy for me in this range as it is, so I'm fine with that.
Off the top of your head, do you know how many touchdowns you have him projected for?
I know that when I do my projections, I try to correct for a league average rate, which would be closer to 6 to 8% for receivers. And obviously that'd be much higher than on their receptions. And that would be much higher than what Godwin gave us last year with 2 touchdowns. So in my projections currently for Chris Godwin, I have him projected for 90 receptions, 1,100 receiving yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. So that's a pretty good number, I would say, if we get that in round 5.
Yeah, I'd say that just about smashes his ADP.
Yeah. And I mean, if he had the touchdowns last year, Chuck, he would have completely blown away his ADP. But even without them, I do think he was more than an acceptable pick in this exact same range.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For me, he's one of the more comfortable clicks. I mean, I was taking Jaden Reed a lot before, and I'm mixing in Hollywood Brown. I wasn't taking him as much, but I was super low on Chiefs exposure. So I'm just because I mean, I'm taking Rashee Rice in basically every single draft if I can right now.
I took Rashee Rice the other day as well. I just think the cost has been, we've talked about this, somewhat overcorrected. He's we think he's better than Hollywood Brown, right? I know obviously there's
Yeah.
the off the field concerns, and that's what's caused the discrepancy in the price here. So if you're going to pay a fifth round pick, for Marquise Brown, I think you should be happy paying a sixth to a seventh round pick for Rashee Rice. And again, in a format like this, Best Ball Mania 5, any of these other large field tournament contests on Underdog, where we're more concerned about exposure in the playoff weeks and not necessarily the entire season, that's, I think, the thing we got to think a little bit more about. And Rashee Rice is almost certainly going to be back to contribute at the end of the season. And that is, I think, the most important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's along the same logic as guys like Nick Chubb, TJ Hawkinson. I'm sure there's a couple more.
I have not been able, and I think it's just largely a sample size error for me at this point, Chuck, because I've gotten a lot of early picks in the teams that I have done. I haven't been able to get like an Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell stack. I think my exposure on all those players right now is firmly at 0%, but I definitely want more than that. I really, really do like Anthony Richardson this year. I think he has number one quarterback potential, could get really good value versus, the first quarterback selected a couple rounds earlier. Led the league in fantasy points per snap. I know small sample, he only played a few games last year, but obviously we got to make sure we get some exposure there as well. And I do think this was somewhat of a whiff by Baby Stevie not getting that correlation here, even though Richardson has that standalone value as a running quarterback. I would have probably leaned towards correlating there.
Yeah, kind of like Jaden Daniels, I've been trying to add more Anthony Richardson as well. And so it's like over the first 75 drafts I did in one of the other contests, I had probably 0% Anthony Richardson. And then over the second 75 drafts, like overall in my set, I'm above the field now. And so, I'm consciously trying to take more of him. So that has something to do with it. But it also, like you said, has to do with the distribution of pick numbers we're getting. And I'm getting so many late picks over on Underdog and early picks on the other sites. And it's kind of wish it was the other way around.
My God, I'm going to be tempted to just go with a sixth receiver in a row here if a certain player is still on the board. I think you probably can guess who it is. Same rookie I always talk about.
I've been taking more of him.
Yeah. Hopefully one of these guys saves me from myself, because I have a healthy portion of him as well. But right in this range is where I definitely feel like I'm starting to feel like I need to at least have one running back selected. And I'm happy if that player is a player like, let's say David Montgomery, because he definitely has a ton of standalone value in that backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot more of the traditional between the tackles work, if you will. So I'm going to hope and pray that he makes it back to me after I select my guy, Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I have a lot of teams where my first running back is right in this range: Joe Mixon, Kenneth Walker, then a ton with Kamara and the other running back that you're about to take, Dave Montgomery.
And I'm just looking at kind of the quarterback outs I've given myself here. I can take Jaden Daniels around pick 100. I can take Trevor Lawrence now. Baker Mayfield is the one that I really need based off of the receivers I drafted. Dak Prescott is also extremely reasonable around pick 95. So those are the quarterbacks we are now officially thinking about as JSN and Christian Watson come off the board. Mentioned having an incentive here to get some Carolina exposure, and we do have Deontay Johnson here. A seventh receiver in a row is kind of crazy. But you know what? Let's do it. Why not? Because then we don't have to worry about taking receivers really for the rest of the contest. I was going to lean towards Jonathan Brooks, but I actually think Deontay is a player I also want to get a little more of. I think we feel pretty confident. Obviously, ADP feels this way, so the field feels this way. But I think we feel pretty good about him being the primary wide receiver there for Carolina, right?
Yeah. I've been clicking on Deontay probably too much, and then I wouldn't do it on a team like this, but if I'm weaker at receiver, if I take like a couple other positions earlier in the draft, I'm taking a ton of Adam Thielen on teams like that. I'm just hoping that he's not dust.
How often, I talk a lot on our shows together about the sea of orange, all these receivers that go super early. How often have you done this, taken 6-7 wide receivers in a row to start a draft? Do you have, off the top of your head, do you feel like you've done this at all?
Well, 7 receivers in a row is the team that won me $20,000 last year. But this year, Well, you had to hit on Kyron Williams. So as long as you hit on Kyron at the end of this draft, this is going to be a monster. I'm doing a lot of 5 in a row, but lately I don't know. Maybe I'm a little too tempted by the value in the early running backs because as long as I have 3 receivers by the 5th round, I'm happy. But like there's sometimes the board just lines up. I never force this. It's only if it falls to me, but I will take 6 receivers in a row. I don't know if I have 7 receivers in a row on any team yet this year, though.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it just kind of fell to me this time. I mean,
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
obviously heard my process on. I'm like, oh, this guy's here. I'll go with him, I guess. Looking at what is likely to still be there, we got a little bit of luck. Maybe I can get Jonathan Brooks. His ADP is around 87, so that feels pretty unlikely. He should go relatively quickly here. But James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard, that's kind of the range here. Pollard is a running back that I feel very comfortable with being the first kind of running back on my team. Especially if Tennessee's going to pass the ball a little bit more this year, that's kind of a role that fits him, I think, better than the one Dallas tried to pigeonhole him into last year a little bit, Chuck. So have him kind of with the highest amount of fantasy points per game for players expected to play the full season anyway, left in this range. So if that is kind of the guy that is still there for me to take at the 8-9 round turn here, I'm definitely happy with that. And with all of the teams that I've been selecting thus far, like Brian Thomas a couple rounds ago, there's actually week 17 correlation with Jacksonville there with the Titans. So that might be an interesting way to kind of allocate things here. I have to be mindful of the quarterback correlations for stacks. So I guess the other subject I'd like you to weigh in on as I wait here is thoughts on stacking Lamb with Dak Prescott. Mandatory in your mind, or is Lamb the type of player where he has plenty of standalone value?
I think he's fine standalone. The thing with Dak is I'm never taking him unless I have CD, and it's not like a conscious decision. I just like I can grab Brandon Cooks later. Maybe sometimes I have Jake. I have taken him on Jake Ferguson teams a couple times, but I guess the point is that if I'm not taking Dak now and I have CD, I'm just not going to have
When
a
are you
lot of
taking
Dak in
him?
my portfolio. Yeah, and so I mean, there's a strong correlation between the quarterbacks and the wide receiver ones on their team, and this is wide receiver one in the whole NFL, so there's got to be something there.
Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow this year, Chuck? Gut call.
Well, I heard someone describe Joe Burrow's wrist injury as like the ACL of the wrist, extremely uncommon for quarterbacks. And so I was kind of back in on Joe Burrow. Now I'm getting kind of scared, but I mean, they're going in the same ADP range. If I knew Joe Burrow was healthy, it's Joe Burrow pretty easily, but it's pretty tough. Like Joe Burrow too, another player I'm only taking if I have Jamar Chase or T Higgins.
I look at what's left at quarterback here, right? And I got Dak pegged for about 21 points per game on average, by far the highest left of any quarterback in that range. But like you, I don't really have any of him on teams where I don't select CD Lamb. So not only do I think I kind of need to select him when I have CD Lamb, I think I want to potentially find paths to even selecting him when I don't, because it looks like you could definitely pair him with Jake Ferguson. You could definitely pair him with Brandon Cooks, right? So if he's going to be a kind of better fantasy play than Jordan Love, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Brock Purdy, et cetera, I think I just in general want to make sure I have more exposure there.
Yeah. And so are you going to take him right now or wait around the turn maybe?
I'm going to roll the dice that he makes it back to me, because I do think this guy next to me has a little bit more incentive to be looking at Pollard, the highest running back remaining. He doesn't necessarily have a reason to take Dak Prescott.
And even if he does, there's still Jaden Daniels there.
Mm-hmm.
I just noticed the what?
Go ahead.
We have a few comments in the chat. Saw Zone Chuba, saw O'Dunes might be returning kicks too. Yeah, it's going to be pretty unfortunate if that happens for my O'Dunes teams, but good for DJ Moore and Keenan Allen.
User before me here elected to pair Jordan Love with Christian Watson. I love that, honestly. That is not a bad idea at all, but we'll go with Dak here. We'll finish the stack, and I won't have the opportunity to pair Jaden Daniels with DJ Moore on this team, but that's another out in this range if you draft like I did. And we're probably going to go with we're going to try to go with Baker Mayfield a little bit later, around round 14 or so, for two quarterbacks on this team. And now I can just pretty much hammer running backs and tight ends to close out the contest.
And John Cotter, I'll get to yours in a second, but since I am the Kai, I take a lot of Baker with CD for the week 16. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems great. And then John Cotter, I've been drafting a good amount of Knicks plus Franklin and or Mims if I want a third stack. Seems like an easy grab. Thoughts?
Man, I'm so washed up that for a second I'm like, why are we talking about Hakeem Nicks? No, he's talking about Bo Nix, the rookie quarterback for the Denver Broncos. In general, game theory wise, I think that's fine. Bo Nix is my lowest ranked quarterback this year, so I have to really force myself to consider pairing these Denver wide receivers with their quarterback. By the time we get to the portion of the draft where Bo Nix is on the board, I'm a little bit more motivated to find ways to get like JJ McCarthy, Derek Carr, even like one of those Pittsburgh quarterbacks, Wilson or Fields. I'll admit Bo Nix is kind of a blind spot for me, kind of the oldest rookie quarterback in the league since Brandon Weeden a few years ago. I feel like I'm just kind of full fade there with Bo Nix right now.
Yeah, I'm never intentionally targeting Bo Nix. I have taken him if I think I'm super weak at quarterback and I just want a third starting quarterback, because I'm pretty sure the Vegas odds have him very strongly favored to start, right? Bo Nix.
I don't really see how he can't. They don't. If you look at what they have, they've got like Jarrett Stidham. We know he's not really anything. So you might as well see if your first round pick, that's the important point here, I think, is worth investing in for the next 3-4 years. So Denver's definitely going to move forward with that experiment, and we obviously should react accordingly. So like he's definitely the quote unquote correct Denver quarterback to be investing in. I'm just not sure how successful he's going to be, if that makes sense.
So you said Bo Nix is your lowest ranked quarterback. So I mean, I have to assume that means you have Drake May ranked above him. Do you have Drake May starting from week 1?
If Drake May was going to play the full season, which I think is probably the incorrect assumption at this point, unfortunately, based off of some of the news out of New England. But if he were, I'm just kind of updating my projections and I'm killing time, if you can't tell. I have Drake May quarterback 20. So
wow.
I have him by like straight projections at about 18 fantasy points per game with the rushing upside, right next to players like Jordan Love, JJ McCarthy, Kirk Cousins in my model. That's where I have Drake May. But obviously at this point, that's just a straight projection for, I guess, New England quarterback across the full season. There is definitely a real liability that Jacoby Brissett is going to play at least to start the year here for the Patriots. So I'm probably going to have to adjust Drake May's projection. I don't think that would be the correct decision for the Patriots. I think we know what Jacoby Brissett is, and he's not a guy that you're building around for the future. So to like win a championship or anything like that. Whereas Drake May, I mean, he may not be that guy either, but you don't know yet, right? It's all about searching for information. And on a rookie deal, if you can't figure out if he's the guy fast enough by next offseason to make the decision to really invest around him, then I'm not sure what you're doing here. Like, I really do think they have to play him early, if not straight away. So that's just kind of the ramblings of one madman, if you will. It doesn't really matter for what we're doing here. We just have to draft based off of what the teams are telling us that they're going to do. And Chuck, right now, New England is telling us that they intend to start Jacoby Brissett.
And would you apply that same logic to like JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold, Minnesota?
I would. Let me make a pick here before we get a little too far away from what we're supposed to be doing. What is left at? You know what? This is probably perfect that this is still here for me. I have not selected this player yet in Best Ball Mania, Blake Corum, who is the backup to Kyren Williams, but I have a lot of Kyren Williams exposure. So consider this an attempt for me to start balancing that out, Chuck, with Blake Corum on my roster. So we're talking about rookie quarterbacks that aren't expected to start right away, or at least for like coach speak reasons. We have kind of a lot of reason to expect these quarterbacks to sit a little while some veterans hold on to the reins for a little bit. I'll tell you straight out, I do not really think when we get to week one that this is actually going to play out the way these guys are telling us, just for like all of these teams. But Jesus, what do I want to do here? I think I am going to take Jacoby Myers again because I like Jacoby Myers. Anyway, back to my point. They have every reason to make these rookies feel like they have to go out and earn the job. We see this every summer, right? But in a tournament like this is not like your standard like redraft league where you have to set your lineup every week. I know this seems like basic information, but it's worth reiterating every time we get on a topic like this. We're mostly concerned with which quarterbacks are going to be playing at the end of the season, Chuck, and not the beginning. And with a player like Dak Prescott on my roster already, I feel pretty good about having a quarterback that's going to be playing right away from me, that's going to slot into that spot and get me some points. So even if I was building a roster here where I had some incentive to take Jaden Daniels was one of them. Obviously, he's gone. Caleb Williams, who went right before my spot, would have been an option with DJ Moore on my roster. We've talked about each of Drake May and JJ McCarthy. I would absolutely love to have those players on teams like this because I'm concerned about what they're going to be doing for me at the end of the season and not the beginning. I know I've been rambling for a while here, so I'll let you take over and counterpoint me or reiterate whatever you'd like to do.
No, yeah, I mean that's correct, and I'm trying to think about finding a balance because you can't make a whole team with like rookies and guys like Nick Chubb, but you can definitely set yourself up to take advantage of it for the playoffs.
Yeah, so I think you raise an interesting point here, right? You got to be mindful of the roster that you have. So, on this roster with Dak, like I was just talking about, absolutely have room to take a shot on a rookie quarterback as kind of a backup. There aren't really any other positions here where I think this applies as much as quarterback, but I think we've kind of beaten this subject to death. The interesting thing with having 8 receivers through 11 rounds is that I probably should definitely not take another one, right? Like you feel like I've definitely got enough here.
Oh yeah, I'd be pretty set.
So on builds that get like 9, even 10 receivers deep, only an 18-round format here on Underdog for this particular contest. What does that type of roster look for you if you're willing to build a team that way? Does it usually have to be one that goes? I guess look at JB Nella here. I went back to the top of the screen. He's got Saquon, A-Chain in each of round 2, round 3, Dalton Kincaid, round 5, Kenneth Walker in round 6. Only 2 receivers through the first 7 rounds. He's kind of basically building the opposite team of me at this point.
Yeah, on Underdog, I don't think I have any 10 receiver teams. I probably have some 9 receiver teams, though. But this happened to me yesterday on one of the other sites in a 20-round draft. I didn't realize the draft started, and I autoed Christian McCaffrey, Devin A-Chain, and Derrick Henry as my first 3 picks. Complete disaster. And first of all, Derrick Henry's ranked way too high on the other sites. So he actually might be a pretty decent value on Underdog. But that draft, I think I took like 8 receivers and George Kittle with my next 9 picks, and then just hope I hit on one of those rookie receivers or something, and basically just hope I take all my favorite 0 wide receiver targets. I guess that's the only time I'd do that, though.
All the running backs I was hoping would make it back to me are going off the board. I should have expected this. Said you wanted more Kenneth Walker. How did you feel about Zach Charbonnet?
I was super in on him last year, and then it's like the same logic applies this year. If I was in on him last year, he wasn't bad as a rookie, and it's just, if something happens to Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet steps up. I'm lower on him than the other guys around him, but I am trying to even it out a little bit. So Nick Chubb goes 1 pick before you.
So I know, right? But that's okay. I have a ton of him. I think, again, not a real correlation reason for me to do this, but I think the theme of the running backs on this team are going to be guys that have asymmetric upside in their backfield. So, again, what if Blake Corum is the guy in the Rams backfield? What if Marshawn Lloyd is the guy in the Packers backfield? It seems like one of the other big drops in ADP was Josh Jacobs, pre-NFL draft, post-NFL draft. And I think that is basically the field voting with their dollars, that they're concerned about the addition of this rookie running back, Marshawn Lloyd. So what are your feelings there with the Green Bay backfield situation here?
Just historically, it's always a split backfield. And so I think even if everyone stays healthy, Marshawn Lloyd, assuming he's the 2 ahead of A.J. Dillon, I think he's still on the roster. I mean, he should have standalone value, and then if anything happens to where he's starting, then it's just a smash.
It's never good when you are like, I'm not sure if this player's still on the roster. Probably means you don't want to draft them. That's for sure. We haven't seen AJ Dillon really get selected at all this year. I am not going to be going after Tua, but I am going to take Hawk here. Yeah, I did that. I went there. So I am going to take TJ Hawkinson as my top tight end here. And I think the way I've built this roster, I can afford to absorb an extended absence by him at the beginning of the season because I can probably get like a third tight end on this team the way that I've built it. So I think we're in good shape here.
And we had John Cotter in chat. 7 wide receivers in a row on the 4th of July is as American as you can get. Yep.
Thank you. I totally agree with that. And yes, for those tuning in, happy Independence Day Eve, if you will. Big night of partying, I think, across the country. So if you're choosing to spend one of your hours this holiday kind of week here with Chuck and I live, or even kind of on kind of running it back, if you will, on the channel after this is over, we definitely appreciate that. There'll be another opportunity tomorrow afternoon. We're going to actually have another live draft on the channel. Chuck, I think you'll be hosting that show with Derek. So I am looking forward to seeing how that plays out for you guys.
And Disbanded Brotherhood, good to see you. See you in a bunch of our chats. Thanks for showing up all the time. He's definitely going to be starting early. Man, I miss which player that's about.
Probably, I mean, that's probably from when I was ranting about the rookie quarterbacks. I mean, I definitely agree on Drake May and JJ McCarthy, like blanket across the board. Those teams just have no incentive not to play these guys, find out what they have, see if they can continue to build around them. Just from like a salary cap standpoint, it just makes too much sense to play these guys and see what you got. I mean, you have a 3rd overall pick in Drake May. What are we doing messing around with Jacoby Brissett? Same with JJ McCarthy, you know, a top pick for the Vikings there. What are we doing messing around with Sam Darnold? We already know these guys are very much not it in terms of franchise quarterbacks that you want to build around it. And that is, you know, no disrespect intended like to their skill level and their professions or anything like that. It's just, I think it's clear from the outside looking in, those are not the quarterbacks that you want at this point to be leading your team.
And then what is Dak's sleep number?
Dak's sleep number. Is he is that one of his brands that he sponsors, the sleep number bed? I haven't really kept up with the commercials for these guys. Hopefully he likes. All right, well, since we're on the subject here, and I want to be clear, this is about mattresses. We like firm or do we like soft? What do we think about this? Chuck, what do you sleep on?
I want to say
memory foam, or like we're talking about mattresses now. This has gone completely sideways.
I got one of those bed in a boxes shipped to my house. It's like a box like this big, and you open it, and it's a mattress. I think I went with the medium firmness, and
there we go.
Second best mattress I've ever had. The first best one was like a $2,000 mattress, but I can't afford a $2,000 mattress right now. So
I think I have a medium firmness one as well from lovely Swedish company that runs some warehouses. No free ads, but I think everybody can figure out who I'm talking about there. So I shared a couple of screenshots of some Aaron Rodgers builds in our Underdog channel in our Occupy Fantasy Discord, which just costs $2.99 a month to become a part of if you're a member of this YouTube channel. So if you've not done that yet, we would certainly appreciate you doing that. And I don't think I've talked much about Aaron Rodgers teams with you that don't include Wilson or Breece Hall. I think I've heard you talk about how you like backstacking those guys with some of our other hosts, but I guess bring me on board with your thinking on Aaron Rodgers is effectively what I'm asking right now.
Oh, for me, he's just kind of a desperation quarterback. If I think I need a guy just to fill in the quarterback spot, possibly for a few weeks.
Baby Stevie, hell of a name, does have Garrett Wilson. He also selected Watson and Trevor Lawrence. Watson's double stacked with Judy, David Njoku. And is there a Jacksonville player here? There is not. So is this a roster where you would have been interested in taking Rodgers, or do you think this was kind of too much quarterback for this player here?
I don't know if I'm ever double tapping Watson and Rodgers there, but I wouldn't mind either of them with Trevor Lawrence. And then if I think I need a third quarterback, take a shot on one of the rookies at the end.
So we locked down the Tampa stack with Baker.
But
And
kind of well, what I was
God,
saying with like CeeDee Lamb and Dak, I mean, if we think Garrett Wilson is going to be that guy, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to have at least a good year, right? And so I think it makes a lot of sense to really make sure you get Aaron Rodgers on Garrett Wilson teams. Probably goes for most first round picks, though.
I think that we've talked a lot about Kamani Vidal as a rookie that has just been screaming up draft boards all season long. But Chuck, I don't think we've really talked a ton about J.K. Dobbins, who you see right here, the underdog news nugget here, feels fully healthy. I think we have to assume that he at least enters camp as the guy most likely to be the primary running back for the Chargers here, and we get him all the way down here in the 15th round. Is this like a clear spot we should be investing in? I think preface this, Chuck, with it's extremely unlikely we're going to have quote unquote another Kyron Williams. But if we're going to have one, isn't Dobbins kind of set up to be one of those guys that has the workload potential to do that?
So let me preface this by saying I have never been in on J.K. Dobbins in any other draft year, but this year I kind of think he might be like the perfect zero RB guy on a team like this, where we probably need a guy who can start week one. And yeah, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal, sure, but J.K. Dobbins probably has the highest ceiling. Because like Gus Edwards, I'm thinking about how's he going to score fantasy points? He probably just has to score touchdowns, right? Where maybe J.K. Dobbins can get there without scoring 2 touchdowns every week.
I know they're both on a new team here in Los Angeles, but man, like we have years of evidence with Baltimore that have shown us when these two guys are healthy,
They're good.
that coaching staff preferred to give Dobbins the touches, right? So the ADP doesn't really make sense to me here, the difference between these two guys.
Yeah, I'm taking probably way too much J.K. Dobbins recently, but if it works out, it pays off so hard.
So
and
I guess we have made that declaration about Mr. Dobbins here being quote unquote the guy that might be Kyron Williams this year. That would be exciting if that plays out.
Disbanded Brotherhood could see a 3-headed committee in Green Bay. Who's the third one? Can't be AJ
Dillon.
Oh,
no, I think that's what he means though. I guess that's what I was
makes sense. Yeah, he actually did average over 3 yards a carry. It's more than I thought. 2 touchdowns.
It's good. I would prefer it to be 4, but that's not here nor
there. John Cotter, yes, Aaron Rodgers. So seems pretty excited about
that is our boy
Jets. Is that Jets?
Yes.
Oh, I love
that's
it.
Our boy. Yeah.
Thanks for showing up. I recognize the name. Thanks for coming, man.
Had a fantastic comment in our Discord. I'm not trying to dox you, dude, but about the different sites that you can draft on. How one is like your college frat bar where there's just chaos going on, and the other is like a very classy Underdog. Here's like your very classy, like high end, like cocktail bar. I just thought that was extremely funny. I think we all had a pretty good laugh about that comment the other day.
I just saw that earlier. I thought that was a good one too.
Yeah.
Disbanded Brotherhood, Ayahuasca Aaron.
It's a fantastic fantasy team name this year. That's definitely one people should use. Hadn't heard that one yet. That's pretty good. I will get us back on track here with some player takes. I have some incentive with Lamb and Prescott, Chuck, to get a Philadelphia player on here. I was trying to get Devonta Smith. I was touting him pretty early on, but I'm actually pretty happy with how this worked out because then I wouldn't have gotten the Tampa double stack. So I'm going to be up here pretty quickly. So what I'm trying to ask you is, what are your thoughts on Will Shipley versus Kenneth Gainwell as kind of your backup running backs here in Philadelphia?
Well, I was drafting a bunch of Kenneth Gainwell pre-draft, and then post-draft after they got Will Shipley. I don't think I'm drafting either of them. I don't know. If I had
they both have quote unquote no ADP. They're both 18th round picks. Shipley around 213, Gainwell around 215. So like I don't know, man. I mean, you're looking for some touchdown value, and you still have Jalen Hurts to deal with there. So I think that's the biggest problem. I'm just basically looking for an out with Philadelphia. Maybe I can do that at wide receiver. I think I'm just going to kind of ignore ADP here and go with Estime in Denver. I do have a lot of this player, but I think when you read stuff out of Denver and how they're not like super invested in Javonte Williams, and Estime is kind of seen as the next best running back on the roster in terms of having the skill set to be an early down grinder, running between the tackles, handle volume if he needs to. Um, he seems like another good bet to kind of have that asymmetric upside here in this range. So I think I'm going to continue to just click him over and over again, if that makes sense. How are we doing at tight ends? Well, I think I have some correlation reasons to be interested in Seattle. I do. Chicago has week 17 with them, and I have DJ Moore on this roster. And Noah Fant should be heavily involved, I think, in this Seattle offense at tight end. So getting him here in the 17th round, more than happy with that. 16 picks behind his ADP.
I'm pretty sure he's up. He's up 4 spots in ADP over the last week. Noah Fant. He's got to be up 20 spots over the last month, though.
So pretty happy with how this has played out. I think I do need one more running back selection here, and just kind of going over the roster here. I guess the point I was trying to make, and then I went back on the clock. I'm just going to compare every late round running back to Kyren Williams, Chuck, and what we can do is we can clip it when one of them is right and just never mention all the rest of them. So Estime would be another running back that has that asymmetric upside to be kind of like Kyren, who would be eligible for 60, 70, 75% rushing share if they see him in that way. Whereas guys like Samaje Perine, if he even makes the roster, are seen as more third down backs with passing game upside. I like Jaleel McLaughlin. He was an explosive player last year that we were into a little bit, but I just don't. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of buzz on him. Keep me honest. From what I have seen, it doesn't seem like there's a ton of buzz on McLaughlin right now.
In the past few weeks, I don't think I've seen much. Just the comments from Sean Payton likes his work ethic. But I think on a previous stream, I think it was with you. I mean, the conclusion that we came to was we're both out on Javonte. We don't think Javonte is the guy. So either Estime or McLaughlin is going to have an opportunity to step up.
And I'm in on both. It's a little easier to select Estime right now, right? Because of him going extremely later in the draft. So I think that's where my exposures are right now. It's more with that player at this point. Man, a player that I feel is kind of similar skill wise and like their explosiveness to Jaleel McLaughlin that is always available late here is actually going to be Keaton Mitchell with the Baltimore Ravens behind Derrick Henry. Obviously, Dobbins, Edwards completely gone in Baltimore. I think Justice Hill is still there. What's your thought on this Baltimore situation behind Derrick Henry? Are you into any of these guys?
No, I have 8% of Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell, but I guess I'm just out on the Baltimore run game.
It's pretty much going to be Derrick Henry or bust, like every other run game has been with Derrick Henry throughout his career. So probably not incorrect. Blake Watson here, who Mike C just selected, is another rookie on that roster as well that I think I've seen the fantasy football Illuminati talking about, if you will. I'm not sure how I feel about Blake Watson at this point compared to Estime, because I think Estime has the draft capital on his side here, but that's another option with the Broncos as well. That just goes to further serve the point that the Broncos are out on Javonte.
Anything on Trey Sermon versus Evan Hull? I've seen Trey Sermon's name pop up.
I don't care about that one.
My guy.
Yeah, that's my answer there.
Love it.
This is boring. It's not gonna make people excited or anything like that. But we got a veteran on the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw him have a little bit of standalone value late in the season last year when Pacheco was a little nicked up in the fantasy football playoffs. So why not CEH here? I like players that are on good teams. That was just kind of the only thesis there of that. I had no reason to select a Kansas City player otherwise, Chuck, but kind of happy to round the team out with a traditional 2-6-8-2 build. I know I went super wide receiver heavy to start, but I was able to get, I think, the depth I was comfortable with at each of the other positions to kind of stay on that build here. So overall, pretty happy with how this one turned out tonight.
Yeah, and you're gonna win the wide receiver position in that whole room every week. So
I thought you were just gonna throw the gauntlet down and be like, "You're gonna win Best Ball Mania 5." That would have been a legendary call, Chuck. Hopefully, that's the goal, I guess, right?
Well, the path is here. Blake Corum is Kyren Williams. Marshawn Lloyd takes over halfway through the season.
That's
J.K.
true.
Dobbins is the RB1 overall. Clip that.
These are kind of where my exposures lie right now. I'm a little light on Underdog at this point, but gone super heavy on Kyren, Antonio Gibson, Nick Chubb. So trying to balance that out a little bit here. And we're going to do that throughout the rest of the summer here on the Occupy Fantasy channel, because we're going to get to the point here, Chuck, in July and August, where we're pretty much going to be drafting pretty much every single day, some combination of all of our hosts on this channel. So it's going to be an exciting time to be following the channel here. It's going to be an exciting time to be playing fantasy sports contests on Underdog Fantasy, which is the easiest and best place to play fantasy sports contests. You see our promo code on the screen here, Occupy2. You can use that to sign up today and get a 50% match up to $250 to start playing contests on Underdog as a first-time depositor. Say this every time, do the ad read, Chuck. That is like the best offer I have seen in the fantasy space. So if for some reason you're watching our shows, you have not yet dipped the toe into the water of playing contests here on Underdog Fantasy, now is definitely a good time to start. And it's not just these NFL best ball drafts that we're super into. You have pick'em contests that you can enter. You can mix and match slips of one or multiple sports that you like as well to enter some different fantasy sports contests against others. The champions contest will be against peers, whereas the pick'em will just be, a straight pick'em fantasy contest slip. So love playing on here every single day, and I know that you do as well, Chuck.
Oh yeah, like we always say, best. This is the best company in fantasy sports.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like we do have, as far as pick'em contests go tonight, a promo stat with Shohei Ohtani over or higher, than half a plate appearance, which basically means you lock that in as an automatic win on your pick slip right away when he steps into the box as the leadoff hitter for the Dodgers against the Arizona Diamondbacks tonight. So you have a stat on here that you like that you can pair with that. You just need to be right about one stat to win some money here on Underdog tonight. So I guess before we close the show, try to put you on the spot. Do you have anything that you're interested in tonight that people could look at?
I mean, just looking really quickly, it looks like Logan Gilbert lower than 35 pitching fantasy score is pretty strong.
All right. So we got Shohei, obviously, higher than half a plate appearance, and less than 35 fantasy points for Logan Gilbert here at home against the Baltimore Orioles. Let's see if that plays out tonight, Chuck. I'll probably end up placing a little bit on that just for the screenshot equity and the fact that we talked about it on tonight's show. That's going to do it for the program, folks. Thanks for hanging with us. We will be back tomorrow afternoon, I believe at 1:30 Eastern, right, Chuck?
Yeah, 1:30 Eastern. I'll be on with Derek.
1:30 Eastern for some more NFL best ball with Chuck and Derek. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.